Up on the Riverwind Casino call-in line at 405-329-9000 or text the show on the Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line at 405-651-3439.
Do it! Just do it!
Now, with Locked In, here's Parker Thune and Grayson Singleton.
I let you babysit for an hour. 1 hour. And everything unravels. I heard it was good radio, though.
Whenever Steely walked into the control room that I'm in to tell me which audio clip we were going to play the next segment, he walks in this door, me and him immediately look at each other, and then just break down laughing.
I brought this up.
Oh, God.
I think I mentioned this to Steely. But it was this day last year. There's always 1 or 2 days every year during the month of August where I am running around during the show, bouncing back and forth between this studio and campus for post-practice interview sessions. And I believe it was this day a year ago where Steely pulled the Nick Saban blank through a tin horn comment.
Yep. And guess who was on his second day on these airwaves? Yours truly.
Man, that's right. You were brand new then.
Yeah, because I started second week of July last year.
That's right. Yeah. So you just hit your 1 year work anniversary here.
Yeah, pretty much.
What a year he has been. What a year it has been. 405-651-3439 is the Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line. 405-651-3439 if you'd like to chime in. Again, we talk a lot of recruiting on this show when there is recruiting to talk about. There's just really not right now. Not a whole lot happening. The Sooners are still waiting on decisions from Davian Gross, from Jake Krell, from Elijah Golden, and from T. Ron Richardson. Now, interesting little detail that I want to bring up here, because the Jake Krell recruitment, I would say, pound for pound, is probably of the most paramount concern to Oklahoma fans right now. This is the recruitment with which they are most tapped in. You can make an argument the answer is Davian Gross when you ask the question, which one is most important for Oklahoma moving forward. But as far as the recruitment that I feel the majority of fans are most in tune with, it is the Jake Krell recruitment. And he spoke to John Garcia of Rivals.com. And Garcia dropped this story about 6 hours ago. And look, the status quo to an extent in Krell's recruitment remains consistent. It's OU, it's Texas, it's Ole Miss. Those are the three at the top of the board for the 4-star defensive end. However, the reason I bring this up is because he finally said what we all suspected, Grayson. He confirmed what we all suspected to be true, and that is that Jake Krell wants to see Oklahoma win football games before he locks in with the Sooners. In his own words, quote, just winning. Let them play out the season. That's kind of the question I have there. Stability is really the main thing. So there you go. You don't want to take my word for it. You don't want to take some other recruiting reporter's word for it. There you go. Take it from Jake Krell. All he wants is to see Oklahoma win football games. And that's why, Grayson, with October being the likely timetable for Jake Krell, and I believe in the story Garcia mentions his birthday is in October 9th. That decision date, if it does wind up being his decision date, and he's not confirmed that, but if he decides in October, in or around, potentially on his birthday, doesn't that line up quite nicely with the Red River Showdown? What day is that this year? I should know this off the top of my head. I don't. I'm ashamed that I don't. But OU Texas this year is on October 11th. October 11th. So, hey, I think if you're a Sooner fan, honestly what you would like is for Jake Krell to make a decision before his birthday on October 9th. Because if he makes a decision before his birthday, we've talked about the way the first 5 games shape up for Oklahoma, Grayson. I think there's a reasonable amount of confidence amongst the fan base that this team can and will start 5-0. Michigan is not a layup. Auburn is not a layup. But end of the day, you feel pretty good about your chances to win those games, especially given that they're at home. Now you take into account the cupcakes, Illinois State, Temple, and Kent State, that precedes OU Texas. And it feels like 5-0 is very attainable. And if Oklahoma is 5-0 by the time Jake Krell's birthday rolls around, maybe that is enough to convince him that he should be a Sooner without even needing to see the outcome of the OU Texas game.
Maybe so, and that's certainly a possibility. If I were him, and it would depend on what sort of an impact Texas is making on him, because if I was him and I am, balanced with where Texas and OU are in my recruitment, I would probably wait till after Red River. Now, here's how the schedule just shakes so favorably for Oklahoma, because right now, Texas is not in the situation where people need to see them win to commit to them. That coaching staff's going nowhere. But the schedule shakes out favorably for Oklahoma because if they're winning early in the season, it's not as if they're winning against, inferior competition. They're winning against Michigan, who placed 15th in the coaches' preseason poll. They're winning against an Auburn team, who is an SEC team that we think could be better than they were a season ago. So you've dispatched of quality competition. And if you could show that, hey, we've turned a corner from last year, being able to give some offensive stability, which in turn will give more stability to the job security of the coaches that are recruiting you, you're in a good situation. So that's how the schedule, even though it's a little bit tougher than most SEC starts to a schedule, actually shakes out favorably for Oklahoma as it pertains to getting recruits to lock it in.
Now, it should also be noted, Texas is going to have a major opportunity early in the season to make a strong impression on Krell, because they're going to play two opponents that might be better than any opponent Oklahoma sees over the first 5 weeks. In fact, probably are better than any opponent Oklahoma will see through 5 weeks, because they got to go on the road and play Ohio State. They got to go on the road and play Florida. Now, you got to win those games, no doubt, but if you do, well, hey, that's a pretty compelling send-the-house final pitch type of message to a guy like Jake Krell. So I know Garcia and others have reported that it's looking like OU Texas at the top of that process. He did mention in the story Florida is still chipping away at Krell, who is a UF legacy, trying to get him back on campus, trying to see if maybe he would expand his top 3 to a top 4. But for all intents and purposes, right now it is between OU Texas and Ole Miss, and more so between those three, it's down to OU Texas.
Garcia, in the article that I read earlier this morning, says he puts Texas in this phrasing: some of the recent momentum certainly sits with the Longhorns. What do you make of that?
And that's true. And, I mean, that's been the case for a while now. Texas has been coming on. The fact that they got an OV from Krell during OV season was a little bit surprising. It didn't really feel at the time like they were top 3. But after the OV, it became quite clear that they were surging, and they've continued to surge. Would I say they have an edge on Oklahoma right now? No. I still believe Oklahoma leads, and I do believe that would be the feedback that you get from anybody that's covering this recruitment closely. But the Sooners are looking right over their shoulder at Texas. I mean, Texas is hot on Oklahoma's heels, to the point where it feels like we've said it a million times, because we probably have. Man, if you leave any margin for Texas to shove their foot in the door come the season, and maybe you don't even lose the Michigan game. If that's a lackluster football game, say like the Houston game was last year for Oklahoma. Yeah, that was an ugly one. And then Texas goes on the road and beats the defending national champions in week 1. The margin gets tighter. A lot tighter. And at that point, I think you do have to worry about Texas potentially supplanting Oklahoma as the lead dog in the recruitment.
Does the margin get tighter? Because keep this in mind, too. The Michigan game is after the Ohio State-Texas game.
It is.
Remember that. So if Texas goes up to Columbus and beats Ohio State, and then the following week, it's not as if these two are happening simultaneously. So you've had a week to digest. Texas just beat Ohio State. Let's see what Oklahoma's got next week. And then they lay an egg. Is that almost not a death sentence at that point? Potentially? Let me rephrase that. Is that not a situation where not only has the margin been tightened, but Texas leaps Oklahoma at that point in time?
I think it's fair to acknowledge that over the first 5 weeks of the regular season, there is more runway for Texas to make a strong impression. Or I should say, there's more of an opportunity for Texas to make a stronger impression than Oklahoma. But that's kind of counterbalanced by the reality that Oklahoma does have the edge for Krell and has for a while. And so at this point, man, feels like this one could go either way. If you ask me who I'm betting on right now, I would say Oklahoma. But they don't have a decisive lead in that recruitment. It is not decisive by a long shot. Tyson from Stigler on the text line says, I'm not sure I like that mentality from Krell. If you like OU, you should come want to help them win, but I understand not wanting to go to a school that might have a complete turnover on the coaching staff. And there, you just hit the nail right on the head, Tyson. I mean, obviously, wherever the kid goes, he wants to help that school win. I have no doubt that he wants to help the University of Oklahoma win. However, if he signs with the University of Oklahoma in the month of December and the program is actively in the midst of a coaching search, all of the individuals that you have built relationships with over a 2+ year recruitment for Jake Krell, at least as far as Oklahoma's involvement, they're out of the picture. And so you're building brand new okay. I guess here's maybe the best way and most sensible way that I can cull this down. Fans that try to put themselves in the shoes of recruits are often paying attention primarily to the logo. And it is for that reason that you get opinions like that, Tyson, where, well, okay, you should want to come help OU win. Perfectly reasonable perspective if you're a fan and you have a loyalty primarily to the logo, right? But if you are a recruit and you are actually navigating this process, and it is your life, and it is your college career, and it's the next 4 years of your existence that you're talking about that are wrapped up in this decision, generally speaking, these days, guys are going to make that decision for one of two reasons. Either relationships and the promise of development from specific coaches, or financial reasons. Very seldom these days are you going to get a guy that commits wholeheartedly to an institution simply because he adores that University of Oklahoma logo, or any other logo for that matter. Now, there are guys that do. And from where I stand, Grayson, I think the guys like that, as a coaching staff, as an institution, everybody involved with the program, like, you pour into those guys as best you can, and you try to make sure that they are satisfied with their accommodations and that they have no reason whatsoever to even think about walking away, because those are program cornerstones, man. Like, those are the types of guys that are going to go the extra mile year-round to try and be great, not only individually, but to help make the University of Oklahoma great. Some examples that come to mind, Elijah Thomas is a phenomenal example of this. Elijah Thomas committed to Oklahoma while still a sophomore in high school. And as Brent Venables said on signing day, Elijah Thomas heard from the biggest schools in the country. Understandably so when you watch him play football. He had no interest. He wanted to be a Sooner. Another great example, Michael Hawkins. You have the legacy factor playing into his recruitment, certainly. But I'm not so convinced that Michael Hawkins wouldn't have wound up at the University of Oklahoma, regardless of who the head coach was or the offensive coordinator was. Like that, he always wanted to be a Sooner. And when he got that opportunity, he jumped on it. And in fact, over the last several weeks of his recruitment, there was a shuffle on staff. There was a new offensive coordinator brought on. The offensive coordinator that had served as his primary recruiter left to take a head coaching job elsewhere, referring, of course, to Jeff Lebby, who departed from Mississippi State 2 weeks before Michael Hawkins was set to sign with the University of Oklahoma. Kid never flinched. And so Elijah Thomas, Michael Hawkins, another great example, another homegrown example, David Stone. And I know some will point back to his flirtation with the transfer portal in April, and they'll ask, well, is that guy really all in for the University of Oklahoma? You got to understand, that dude, and it's well documented, he had people within his circle that were pulling at his strings, if you will. And so was David Stone ever going to actually transfer? I don't know. I tend to think not, because at the end of the day, that was a decision that he was making for his own future, and he never wanted to leave Oklahoma, at least not per the folks that I talked to at the time that were involved in that process. David Stone is a guy that committed to Oklahoma when I'll say it, I'm sure I'm not the first one that said it. He had offers of more money at other institutions, and he chose to stay home and put on for the Crimson and Cream. And so it's guys like that that are rare, and you treat them accordingly when assessing their value to an institution. Because, as I said, guys like that can be and generally are program cornerstones. You got to bring it on the gridiron as well. And nobody cares if you're all in for the University of Oklahoma, but you're the fourth string offensive guard, right? But for the guys that are legit alphas on the gridiron and that live and breathe and bleed Oklahoma Crimson, you love having them, but they represent probably 5% of your roster at any given time. There just aren't that many of them. 405-651-3439 is the Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line. Much more to unpack. Obviously, practice availability this morning out on the rugby fields. We'll dive into it and much more on the other side. Keep it here on the Ref, the home of Sooner fans.
Motorcycle riders face extra dangers on the road because of distracted drivers. Each year, thousands of lives are forever changed by tragic crashes, leaving families to pick up the pieces.
We understand the emotional toll these crashes cause. Insurance companies don't. At McIntyre Law, we're here to level the playing field.
If you or a loved one has been injured in a motorcycle crash, call us at 405-777-7000. We are McIntyre Law, protecting Oklahoma riders one case at a time.
These days, finding heavy equipment you can trust feels impossible. But at M&S Construction's retirement auction on Purple Wave, it's all there. Over 60 pieces, hydrovac trucks, boring units, dump trucks, trenchers, and so much more, all selling with no reserve. The auction closes July 31st, so don't wait. Visit purplewave.com today to bid. That's purplewave.com, the M&S Construction's retirement auction.
Beats and Bites Festival is back again at Riverwind Casino, where good grooves and great food are on tap all summer long. Join us August 9th for Kansas and Starship, along with
and More Norman in South Oklahoma City have an experienced business partner in their neighborhood. More Norman Technology Center's workforce and economic development team understands the challenges entrepreneurs and small businesses face every day. From building an effective business model to hiring the right employees and managing cash flow, More Norman's business development experts can help you move forward confidently and thrive, knowing that you have a skilled partner at your side. Learn more about More Norman's Technology Center by calling 405-801-5000 or visit us online at mntc.edu.
Built for success? How about Built by Law? Law Custom Homes and Construction is here to build your next home. With over 30 years of experience, Barry and Angela Law pride themselves on building the best quality homes in Norman. Locally owned and operated, Law Custom Homes and Construction can also help you with carpet, tile, siding, windows, granite, and roofing. Don't wait. Call Barry Law at 405-919-7118 and let Law Custom Homes build your next quality home. That's 405-919-7118.
This year, you wanted it, and we delivered on it by making this year's edition of the Ref's Gridiron Giveaway bigger and better than ever before. Thank you to all of our great sponsors who helped make the 2025 Ref Gridiron Giveaway bring you the best prizes in the state. Riverwind Casino and Hotel, Buffalo Wild Wings, Cavens Group, Confidence Ford, First United Bank, Heyday Family Fun, Signature Pool and Patio, Primrose Funeral Services, Valiance Bank, Sooner Bowl, Coop Ale Works, Mitchell's Jewelry, Armstrong Bank, and Main Event. And most of all, thank you to all of you in the Ref Army. Without you showing up and showing out, none of this would be possible. We are the Ref, the home of Sooner fans, and the home of the best giveaways in the Sooner States. The Ref Sports Radio Network.
Illicit fentanyl is the deadliest drug threat that our nation has ever experienced. It has killed hundreds of thousands. Many of its victims didn't even know they were getting fentanyl. Such a tragedy. This is Robert De Niro. One of those tragic deaths was my beautiful grandson, Leo. He was just 19 years old. Fentanyl doesn't care, but you do. Join us in the fight against fentanyl. Find us online at ladrfoundation.org.
The University of South Carolina had not been the host site of ESPN's College Game Day since 2014, but that changed last year when Columbia hosted the premier college football kickoff show in Week 3. Because it was the first time in a decade, South Carolina did it big, bringing out women's basketball superstar coach Dawn Staley, Mayor Daniel Rickenman, and country music legend Darius Rucker. If the Gamecocks are a prime SEC team this year, Game Day could make its way back to Columbia for matchups against Oklahoma, Alabama, or even Clemson.
Trying to think of some past connections between Oklahoma and South Carolina as far as the roster, as far as recruiting. There aren't a ton. I know a guy that you mentioned in the little promo bumper that we ran last hour, Jalen Kilgore. That was an OU South Carolina recruiting battle.
Was it really?
Yep. I think those were the only 2 OVs he took, and was that all the way back in the 22 cycle? Is that how long it's been? I think so.
I would say Kilgore's been around for a while.
He has. Good player. A guy that Oklahoma really, really wanted. But wound up at South Carolina. There is a former Oklahoma commit currently on the roster at the University of South Carolina, Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, who was a 5-star that flipped late from Oklahoma to Texas A&M after Calvin Thibodeau was not retained in December of 2021. We all remember Austin Stogner, right?
Yep.
Austin Stogner pulled the old flip-flop, went from OU to South Carolina, back to OU. Spencer Rattler went to South Carolina, never did come back to OU. And then their head ball coach, Shane Beamer, was hired
out of OU.
I was trying to figure out the best way to phrase that. But yes, he was hired as head coach at South Carolina while on staff as an assistant at OU. And I do believe, if memory serves me correctly, and it may not, someone will and should correct me on the text line if this is incorrect, I believe Beamer was loyal enough to Oklahoma that he coached in the 2020 Big 12 championship game for OU after already having accepted the South Carolina job. It was either that or he coached the Cotton Bowl. I can't recall. But, yes, Shane Beamer was an assistant on staff at Oklahoma for 3 seasons before he got the opportunity to be the head ball coach out there at South Carolina. He's done well for himself, man. He really has. Any other OU South Carolina recruiting battles come to mind? If so, let us know.
A texter in the 405 says Nicholas Harbor.
No, that wasn't a South Carolina OU battle. By the end of it, that was a South Carolina-Oregon battle that went all the way until signing day. Now, there was a time There was a time, and it was early in Harbor's recruitment, early, junior year, that Oklahoma was the outright leader for him. And it was because Jamar Cain was on staff. And Jamar Cain, who is now on staff with the Denver Broncos, and to be clear, like I think Oklahoma got a good one in Miguel Chavis, as evidenced by the fact that he landed a 5-star recruit in his very first cycle as a position coach. But when Jamar Cain was not retained, Brent Venables caught a lot of grief among the Oklahoma fan base for that, because Jamar Cain did want to stick around, and he was an incredible recruiter. Incredible. As the story goes, Grayson, Marvin Jones Jr., back in November of 2021, had a plane ticket booked for the week after the Bedlam game to touch down in Oklahoma and go film a commitment video. Jamar Cain was about to swing Marvin Jones at the very end of the 2022 recruiting cycle. He was a 5-star, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lincoln Riley dropped the bombshell on everybody and left. And with the uncertainty on staff at that point as to who was going to be retained and who wasn't, Jones slowed things down a little bit. Ultimately, Oklahoma's window of opportunity to land him closed when Cain was not retained as defensive ends coach. But he ended up here anyway. It just took 3 years. Took 3 years longer than it was supposed to initially, but Marvin Jones did wind up an Oklahoma Sooner. Kyle from Salisaw says, Bob Stoops coached the Alamo Bowl against Oregon, not Beamer. I was there, and what a time. Yeah, I'm not talking about the Alamo Bowl. Beamer left a year before. So I'm talking 2020 bowl season. So I can't recall whether he had taken the South Carolina job and he stayed on to coach the Big 12 championship game, or whether he even stayed on to coach the Cotton Bowl against Florida. But Beamer's departure preceded Lincoln Riley and the majority of the staff's departure by 1 season. Let us know on the text line again if you can recall any prominent OU South Carolina recruiting battles. LaDonna from Lubbock, chiming in on our conversation from last segment, said, these are the kids I'm endeared to, Sooner born and bred. Yeah, I mean, those are the guys, right, that are so easy to root for. Somebody else in the text line, and I forget who it was, or I would give them their proper credit, says the answer, the example is and always will be Ethan Downs. Ethan Downs, Weatherford's own. Right? Sooner from birth. Sooner till the day he dies. That crimson and cream, that was all he ever wanted to wear from the time he was a young child. And he did get that opportunity and did quite well with it. He's in the NFL now with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But ultimately, as I mentioned, Grace, like you'd love to have 105 of those guys. That's just not feasible. And Jim Nagy brought this up a few weeks ago. He said, look, we'd love to build a roster that's full of talent from within the state of Oklahoma, but we also have to make sure that they're worth the scholarship. We have to believe that they can play winning football for us. You could build a roster of 105 guys that are Sooner born and Sooner bred. Not all of them are going to be able to contribute to a winning program in the Southeastern Conference, which, again, is why I said, like, if you have 5 or 6 of those guys on your roster at once, you're doing pretty well. Because the rare ones, the ones that love the university enough and are also talented enough on the gridiron, are very few.
Yeah, and you're starting to slice into the numbers when you're niching yourself like that. That's what makes that infeasible, is because so you look at the state of Oklahoma. The state of Oklahoma already doesn't produce the highest volume of P4 players. They produce a good amount, but not the highest volume. Okay, so you've got that. Now we have to look at, okay, which one of them grew up OU fans and have an undying love for the school. So that eliminates some.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what's going on here is, if you want to go about it that way, you're just slicing and slicing and slicing and slicing and niching yourself down. That's why in Fantasyland, that is a hell of an endeavor.
Well, and I mean, then you have the very new aspect of all of this within the last 5 years where, in a lot of cases, you got to place a value on them that is commensurate with the value that they believe is appropriate for themselves. That's why Caden Jones isn't a Sooner, right?
Yeah.
That's a guy that grew up Sooner born, Sooner bred, legacy
Literally.
kid. But yeah, I mean, Oklahoma did not feel he had the same value as a player as some other schools did. And so the Sooners wound up on the outside looking in. It is what it is. Get very, very few of these dudes.
Tyson from Stigler says, what if colleges had to only recruit players from their state? Well, you're not going to be happy about what would be happening in the Lone Star State.
No.
That would not go well for OU fans.
Yeah, LSU, they do pretty well. Alabama would do pretty well. All the Texas schools would do pretty well. Georgia and the Florida schools, they do well. Mississippi, I mean, Ole Miss and Mississippi State would be all right. Oklahoma would be all right. Probably not a national title caliber football team if you were just limited to prospects within the state of Oklahoma.
That's a fun little exercise, though.
Nebraska would be awful.
Not a whole lot of football players come out of there.
There are a few every single year, kind of like Oklahoma, but not nearly enough. Not nearly enough. A 740 listener says, OU is one of the few blue bloods that isn't the sole dominant university in the state. Add in low population and proximity to other big schools, and you have a smaller segment to recruit for compared to Ohio State, Penn State, Tennessee, etc. Okay, Penn State and Tennessee are not blue bloods.
Penn State is a more recent, stable national championship contender.
Yes, they are. Even so, not a blue blood. Tennessee's
No.
not even close. The blue blood schools are what? Like USC's a blue blood. Ohio State is certainly a blue blood. Notre Dame is a blue blood. Michigan.
Alabama, Texas.
Texas is borderline for me, but yes, Alabama. Georgia's another one that, I'll hear a case for it. I'll hear a case for them just as I'll hear a case for Texas. And even if you want to throw a couple new bloods into the mix, Georgia and Clemson, I think, have a case. But yeah, no. Tennessee and Penn State, not blue bloods. Pop from Cement asked, who has looked like crap in practice thus far? That's the one thing. That's the one question you will never hear me answer. I don't want to pile on to guys in fall camp, mostly because here's the other reality too, is that just as there are guys that look good in fall camp every single year, and they're able to parlay that into opportunities on the gridiron that they do well with throughout the fall, and they emerge as big-time contributors for the football team, sometimes there are guys that aren't looking too hot in fall camp, and then Saturdays roll around, and they flip a switch, man. They're gamers. That's a real thing. I know Jeff Lebby, back when he was at Oklahoma, said it isn't. The concept of the gamer is absolutely a thing. I disagree wholeheartedly with Jeff Lebby on that front, but that's okay.
Sooner Judge says, Texas is, unfortunately. Georgia and Clemson are not. There are 8. Okay, I had this conversation with Steely about a month ago, Parker. At what point do we start more heavily weighing recent success? Because you can't tell the story of college football 2015, 2012, and on, and leave Georgia and Clemson out of that. There's no way to accurately do that.
I would say, to me, Georgia and Clemson are both one more national title away from certifiable, unquestioned blue blood status. They're right there on the cusp as it is, and there's a very compelling case to be made.
Okay, I'll give you that. So what about LSU?
That's another one that we're like, I would give the nod to LSU.
Okay.
I think. I right now I would sooner give the nod to LSU than Clemson and Georgia. But they're another one that's like fringe territory.
Larry from Cashin says, odds PJ finally has a breakout year.
Ooh, a PJ question. Yes, I mentioned.
Well, you did.
I mentioned in passing.
PJ,
yeah, I mentioned in passing. Chavis landed a 5-star in his very first cycle as a position coach in college football, and we got several texts like, he did? Who was that? Yeah, it was PJ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was PJ.
Yep.
And there was a lot to get excited about with PJ at the time. There still is a lot to get excited about with PJ, man. He was out there taking first-team reps today at practice, and he has been. And it's not just him. Some of those first-team reps are certainly going to Taylor Wine as well. Marvin Jones is in the mix. But I maintain, and I know Brent Venables is enamored with Danny Okoye, and it's easy to be enamored with Danny Okoye, and I think Danny Okoye is going to be a really good player. I maintain that there is no freakier physical specimen in Oklahoma's defensive end room right now than P.J. Adibawara. That dude is blessed with gifts that 99.99% of the human population can only dream of. 6'4", 260 pounds, just an absolute creature, man. The bend and the flexibility that he's able to maintain, the freakishly long arms, he's got almost a 7-foot wingspan. If PJ puts it all together this fall, and he stays healthy, and that to me is even big. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot more that he has to add to his game. There's not a whole lot that he has left to figure out. As long as he stays healthy, he's going to be a major cog in that defensive end rotation for Oklahoma.
Tyson from Stigler says, is it looking like Reggie Powers is going to take Peyton Bowen's spot?
At strong safety, I think it's a possibility.
Really?
I think it's a possibility. Like, I do. And I guess maybe what I would ask to follow that up is what do you consider it to be when you're saying Reggie Powers taking Peyton Bowen's spot? Like, he becomes the principal starter? Because you're going to see Reggie Powers on the field, and you're going to see Peyton Bowen on the field, regardless of who is named the actual starter at the position. Now, I do think Powers has come on strong enough that there's a world in which he very well does overtake Peyton Bowen for that spot. And to be clear, I think that's more of a credit to Reggie Powers than an indictment on Peyton Bowen. Because if you go watch Reggie Powers' senior tape at Centerville High School in the state of Ohio, it is abundantly evident that that dude was underrated. He did not get his due as a recruit in the rankings. He has an immensely high ceiling. And if he is good enough and he is ready enough to so much as take a chunk of the snaps from a 5-star who has produced at the collegiate level in Peyton Bowen, I think that speaks volumes to where Reggie Powers is headed. Man, the texts are all over the place because the conversation has kind of been all over the place this segment. But we're talking mostly fall camp, folks. Had an availability with Miguel Chavis earlier today. Had an availability with 6 different players that we were able to catch up with. Got to see some open practice as well. It's football time in Oklahoma, and we got you covered here on The Ref. We'll hit more of your questions on the Knippelmeyer Chevrolet text line. We'll talk about some of the more prominent camp storylines in much greater detail coming up next here on The Ref. The home of Sooner fans. Keep it here.
This is your home for Sooner fans. The Ref Sports Radio Network.
The Norman Chamber of Commerce encourages you to shop small this summer. At Heyday, a day of fun awaits the whole family. Laser tag, mini golf, ropes courses, bowling, and an exclusive 21 and up area. And now Hey Pickle Pickle is the spot in Norman for pickleball, whether you are new or a pro. Heyday and Hey Pickle Pickle pack a ton of fun. Make a splash at Signature Pool and Patio, Norman's premier swimming pool service, cleaning, patio, spa, and pool accessory destination. Get your patio essentials, ledge loungers, pool floats, umbrellas, pool toys, grill necessities, and so much more. Plus, stay local and get all your bases covered at Play It Again Sports. Get new and quality used gear right here in Norman. Buy, sell, or trade new and used sports equipment, including baseball, softball, football, tennis, soccer, and more. Remember, shopping small this summer can make a big impact.
No one plans for an injury, but when the worst happens, count on the best orthopedic team to turn your setbacks into comebacks. Ortho Central's comprehensive care has you covered, from expert orthopedic surgery and sports medicine to in-house imaging, physical therapy, and even a bone health clinic. So whether it's a fracture, a tear, or just life catching up with you, we're here to get you moving again. Ortho Central, it's in our bones to take care of yours. Learn more at orthocentralok.com.
Want to have a cool summer? Well, get ready now. Tune up your summer comfort and savings with an AC tune-up from OG&E. And the coolest thing? It's available at no out-of-pocket cost to you. An AC tune-up will reduce your cooling costs, make your home more comfortable, and boost your AC unit's energy efficiency by up to 30%. How cool is that? Sign up today at oge.com/efficiency and stay cool all summer long.
Children are the greatest joy and our best hope for a better future. Friends, they are the future. But did you know that millions of kids are facing hunger every day? Food is not just food. It's energy, health, confidence, hope, and even love. Yes, love.
Thank you!
Learn more about how No Kid Hungry is helping end child hunger in America at helpnokidhungry.org.
Many of our U.S. veterans and service members face challenges: mental health struggles, housing obstacles, food insecurity, and social isolation, to name just a few. I'm Bob Woodruff. My family and I started the Bob Woodruff Foundation in 2006 after I sustained a life-threatening injury while reporting from Iraq. Our service members had my back that day, and we need to have theirs now more than ever. At our foundation, we invest in solutions, so learn more about our work at bobwoodrufffoundation.org/success.
Dreaming of an escape? What about a relaxing escape to your very own backyard? Signature Custom Pools can turn your dreams into reality. Signature Custom Pools creates distinctive designs to fit your perfect getaway. Call Signature Custom Pools for your free design consultation at 405-898-9098 or visit them online at signaturecustompools.com and turn your backyard into your dream escape.
Speaking of technology, did you know that RK Black is an authorized dealer for Kyocera copiers? And the Kyocera copiers aren't just copiers. They're smart devices that can scan, print, fax, and email your documents with ease and security. Even better, they're backed by RK Black's award-winning service team that is built on nearly 70 years of taking great care of our clients. Whether you need a desktop printer or a multifunction copier, RK Black has the right product for you. Let's get the conversation started. Give us a call at 943-9800 or visit us at rkblack.com.
Final segments of Locked In here in the Ref. The show brought to you today and every day by Dorsey Jones GMC out in El Reno. Family owned and operated. Half-price oil changes on Saturdays. A low-pressure sales environment where they can get you set up with a GMC truck or SUV, which is some of the most reliable vehicles you will find out there on the market. Dorsey Jones GMC in Norman. It is SEC Team Takeover Day for South Carolina here on the Ref, presented by Landers CDJR. When you choose Landers Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram in Norman, you're not just getting a great vehicle, you're supporting a dealership that cares about the community. From reliable sedans to rugged trucks and spacious SUVs, they have the perfect vehicle to fit your needs and budget at LandersCDJRNorman.com. We have a Fong bomb from the Godfather himself, Steve Wiltfong, Vice President of Recruiting and Transfer Portal at Rivals. Entered a prediction moments ago for four-star defensive lineman Elijah Golden in favor of Notre Dame. So,
tracks along with what you've been saying, kind of.
Yep. Oklahoma's been pushing. They've been making some noise. I'm not convinced they have yet overtaken Notre Dame. And that prediction from Steve would lead you to believe that the Fighting Irish are on the precipice of staving off Oklahoma's momentum and holding the line in Golden's recruitment. So we'll see if anything changes over the next 5 days. Again, he's supposed to announce on August 9th, but might Oklahoma come up just a little bit short? The Sooners have finished second a lot this summer, Grayson. Now, in the transfer portal era, that's not the worst thing. It's not that much of a silver lining because if you're not first, you're last, Ricky Bobby, right? But there is more value in finishing second than ever before, because if somewhere down the line any of these kids wants to hit the transfer portal, be it Elijah Golden or Jordan Clay or Dallas Dickerson, or I don't know, pick the guy that Oklahoma's finished second for over the last couple of months. If ever they hit the transfer portal, Sooners may not even need to call them. They may pick up the phone and call Oklahoma. I mean, there are many examples in years past of this phenomenon. Guys that loved Oklahoma coming out of high school, but for one reason or another, they chose a different school, but lo and behold, they get in the portal, they wind up at OU anyway. It's also the case for some guys that maybe didn't get the OU offer at first, but always wanted to come, always wanted to be a Sooner. Great example that's on this roster right now, Josiah Martin. Josiah Martin wanted to be a Sooner. Didn't get the opportunity out of high school, spent a year at Cal. Boy. He did well enough. He didn't do a ton, but he did well enough that Emmett Jones saw some of that freshman year tape, and boom, opportunity was there.
I'm so glad you brought up Josiah Martin in this regard, because ever since fall camp has started, we've talked about Deion Burks, we've talked about Zion Kearney, we've talked about Ivan Carrione, Elijah Thomas looks really good. Isaiah Satania has been Mr. Consistency. Where does Josiah Martin fit into all of this in this wide receiver room in your estimation?
I think and I hope he redshirts. I think it would do him some good. He's only 163 pounds. He needs to bulk up. There shouldn't be that much of a need to put him on the field. And I think this year could serve as a really valuable learning opportunity for him operating behind Deion Burks and Isaiah Satania. So he played as a true freshman last year at Cal, did some nice things. If he redshirts, preserves his eligibility, and he can come back in the fall of 2026 with 3 years in front of him to perhaps inherit a larger role when guys like Burks have moved on and there's a bit of a changing of the guard. Potentially Satania will have moved on at that point as well. I don't know. He's a redshirt junior. He can come back next year, but I halfway wonder if he has the year that some in the building expect him to have, he may be off to the NFL. We'll see. But I would hope Josiah Martin, I would hope everything goes well enough, smoothly enough in that wide receiver room that Josiah Martin will be able to take a red shirt. I worry about anybody that's an ounce under 170 at wide receiver.
Oh, yeah. Easy. Especially in the SEC.
Got Zion Reagan's there at 157.
How are they going to use him?
They are going to use him.
What is the plan for a dude that is that small?
I would expect that they use him very sparingly. Very sparingly. And I know, Oklahoma has never seen him as purely a gadget type of player. But I don't know where his snaps are going to come from. Because if you're going to put him in the slot, well, you would sooner have Satania, Burks, and or even Jacob Jordan out there instead of Reagan's. And are you really going to line him up at outside receiver when you have much more sizable options in the room?
Well, you can't put him at outside receiver.
He played a lot of outside receiver last year out of necessity. And I think what you saw, to your point, is that really all you have to do with a guy that small is bump him, right? Bump him at the line. He's not going anywhere.
Nope.
He's not strong enough.
But also, do you want to put him in the slot where he's running over the middle, going to get crushed by somebody who literally might be 100 pounds heavier than him?
Yeah, I don't know how big of a role there is for Reagan's in year 2 at Oklahoma. He's got to put on weight. He's got to add mass because he still just looks little, man.
And there's some people, though, that they can't put on that kind of weight and still have the skill set that they have. Like, the Kansas City Chiefs had to do this with Xavier Worthy last year when he came into the NFL. You got to figure out how we can put on weight to where he doesn't lose the speed and the twitchiness that makes him him. And I think Oklahoma's going to have to walk that same fine line with a guy like Zion Reagan's if he's going to have an impactful career here in Norman.
Greg Muskogee asks, speaking of wide receivers, any word on Choice? He's looked nice in the few practices we've been able to see thus far. I like Manny Choice. I loved him as a recruit. I think he's going to play a big-time role for this team as early as 2026. I don't see him doing all that much in 2025. Similarly to Josiah Martin, you hope that's not a guy you have to use a ton. Because if you do, it probably means there are concerns higher up the depth chart, or there are injuries higher up the depth chart. Manny Choice is 6'4", 212 pounds. He looks great. But it begs the question, if he is seeing the field in a substantial capacity, what has gone wrong with either of the brothers Gibson? I know they're not actually brothers. Ivan Carrion and or Zion Kearney, right? So I think the hope would be you don't see a lot of Manny Choice in 2025.
Let me ask you this. Do you think, if anything, I'm not going to say if 6 wide receivers are hurt because that's bananas, but if anything approximating that happens, which is possible, do you think Oklahoma set up better deeper down the depth chart to throw guys in and have them play meaningful, impactful snaps than they were a season ago?
Certainly. Like, if Oklahoma gets in a position where they have to throw Manny Choice out there,
you probably don't feel terrible about it.
No, I really don't. Like, if they get in a position where Keontez Lewis is there in the starting lineup, for instance, because I think he's a surefire second-teamer right now, but if Keontez Lewis is starting for Oklahoma at a certain point, I don't feel awful about that. I don't. If Elijah Thomas is in the lineup, if you're so banged up at a certain point that you're relying on Elijah Thomas to go out there and give you starters reps, I think he can handle them. I love this wide receiver room, man. Assuming they stay healthy and you don't see the catastrophe that likes of which you saw last year with that group, the amount of contributors in this wide receiver room, the amount of dudes that are going to be able to go out there and make plays, the depth is so tantalizing. There was a listener that asked, what's the word on Deion Burks' injury? So did just confirm in the last break via a source that his issue is very minor. He will be back to practice very soon, within the next few days. So nothing really to write home about there with Deion Burks.
Tanner.
Same thing with Derek Simmons, by the way. Just adding that in for those that aren't aware of what exactly is going on with him. Discussed it at OUinsider.com over the weekend. His injury occurred on Saturday during Saturday's practice, but Derek Simmons won't be out long either.
Tanner on the YouTube says, going back to our conversation on Zion Reagan's weight, how small was Hollywood Brown? He couldn't have been close to what Zion Reagan's was. Or is.
Hollywood Brown was about 165 pounds during his playing days at Oklahoma.
What is he now?
He can't be much more than like 175 probably. Like, he's always been a slight guy. Here's the thing about Hollywood Brown and his game, though. Hollywood Brown's game made a ton of sense for Oklahoma at the time.
He's 180.
They were playing – he's really 180. Okay, yeah. Good on him. Oklahoma was playing Big 12 football in those days. And everything was about speed and space, stretching the field. Let's score 1 billion points. And that'll be how we win football games. That's really the only way Oklahoma could win football games in those days. Hollywood Brown, and he's done well for himself at the NFL level. I don't want to take that away from him. He probably isn't making the same impact at Oklahoma that he made in the Big 12 in today's SEC. His game isn't ideally suited for the Southeastern Conference. It's not to say it can't work. It's not to say he can't add value. Again, a guy like Zion Reagan's, as long as he bulks up, there's going to be a role for him at OU. You're just not going to lean on him as much as Oklahoma was leaning on Hollywood Brown at the time, 2017-18, when they were playing that wide-open style of Big 12 offensive football. Justin, formerly Yoda, says, if Burks stays healthy, do you think he can be a 1,000-yard, 8-touchdown player? I do.
Yes.
Is he going to be a 1,000-yard guy? I wouldn't bet on that just because I think there's going to be enough distribution of targets that I frankly don't know if anybody at Oklahoma cracks 800 yards this year. And I don't think they need to. Right? Like, if Oklahoma doesn't have a 1,000-yard receiver, it's probably like John Mateer could throw for 4,000-plus yards, and I don't know that Oklahoma would have an 800-plus yard receiver. That's just kind of how I see things shaking out at the wide receiver room. If somebody individually does really pop off, I think it's got to be either Burks or Giovanni Gibson, right? Now, Satania, I can see a case for Satania just because with as much as he's going to play in that slot And you think back to the last time Oklahoma had a guy that reliable in the slot, Drake Stoops in 2023, there may just be enough sheer volume there that Satania could approach or even crack 1,000 yards just because he catches 80, 90 passes.
It would have to be volume-based because he's not, or at least he wasn't at Arkansas, used as that much of a burner. So, he was a 10, 11 yards per catch type of dude. So,
Man, we dug into a lot over the course of an hour here on Locked In, and I still feel like we only really hit the tip of the iceberg. Man, there's going to be so much good fall camp talk to be had throughout the month of August, and we'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. Same time, same place, and in the meantime, we will turn things over to Teddy Lehman and Tyler McComas. The Rush is coming up next here on The Ref. Stay right here.